Good evening. Um, what I want to talk about is relationships. You know, we've all been in maybe one bad relationship or another at a time, one time or another, and then we deal with the aftermath. You know, which is often and a very empty and depressing feeling, can cause anxiety, fear. You know, that fear though, when you experience that fear, it's really a fear of being alone. Some people, when they experience that fear, they'll jump from one relationship into another. But let me talk about, you know, some of the things that a lot of you might have recognized in relationships that you're either in or that you're in now, currently. You know, where there's trust issues that pop up. You know, um, trust is a major one. You know, if you can't trust somebody that you're in a relationship with, then why are you in it? And then why are you staying in it? Some people will stay in relationships where they don't trust. Some people won't trust because of their own experiences, because they have walls and barriers up, because they've either been cheated on or they've been done wrong. Um, so the thing I wanna focus on is maybe some of the red flags that are ignored early in a relationship. You know, you have that honeymoon stage. You know, that honeymoon stage, everybody's on their best behavior, and that's where you get sucked in a lot of cases where you don't identify a lot of things because they're not being shown. Um, it's not until the person is completely confident and comfortable that you're in it, that your heart's in it, that they have a huge part of your heart, that all of a sudden things start popping up. Um, a guy who is insecure about himself, for instance, he's going to be controlling in a relationship. He's going to be obsessive. Uh, he's going to accuse. He's going to blame. He's going to try to isolate you, and this goes both ways. It's not just with guys. So, you know, women can do the same thing. And I guess maybe I should clarify that. You know, if the person in a relationship is insecure, these are the behaviors they're going to display. And you know, um, there's going to be, say, you know, they're going to try to isolate you from your friends. You know, out of fear. Um, they're going to, if they're insecure about themselves, they're going to constantly and continually size themselves up to everybody around them, especially when in a relationship. And that may not be evident when they're not in a relationship because they have no reason to. But when their heart belongs to somebody else, they feel that vulnerability. When they feel that vulnerability, they have an overwhelming amount of fear because they don't feel good enough. They don't feel adequate enough for the person that they're with. And they question their own self-worth. You know, I'm not good enough. I don't have enough money. I'm not good enough looking. I'm not maybe big enough or good enough in the areas of masculinity or feminine that you know that I don't know how you'd word that, but where you'd emphasize that importance, I guess, where you'd feel that was important. You know, a guy might emphasize, you know, I may not be big enough down there for her, or I may not be good enough in bed for her. And a woman might feel the same things, might think the same things. You know, my body isn't great enough. You know, and we analyze ourselves, and we're our own worst critics. And when we have these insecurities and these fears, they're usually developed through childhood and coming up, and maybe abandonment issues. But we come up not feeling good enough. You know, abandonment issues will definitely do that, and in almost every case, will cause you to feel insecure and inadequate about yourself. You know, because you know you've already been taught since you were a kid, or coming up or growing up, that you know that if I was good enough, maybe you're telling yourself if I was good enough, then the people that I loved wouldn't treat me the way they did, or they wouldn't have abandoned me and left me on my own. You know, whether whether through divorce, whether you have a parent that's abusive, or whatever, whatever the case may be. But abandonment issues, I'm willing to bet 9 times out of 10 are probably behind somebody's insecurities and their fears, um, and how they feel about themselves. You know, the things I share with you and the things that I'm talking to you about because of my own experiences, because of things I've had to heal from. If I talk about toxic relationships, it's because I've been in toxic relationships. I've been a toxic person in a relationship, and I've also been the victim of, well, I don't like to use the word victim because I'm not a victim. Um, I've also been on a receiving end of somebody who's been toxic, you know. And let me say that stay away from the word victim, because I'll never stand before my Creator and view myself as a victim or stand in self-pity for anything that I've experienced or I've had to go through because of my perception of life and my experiences and what I've learned from them. Um, my life is an open book, and that's one of the reasons why I can sit here and I can tell you, that I know what it's like to be controlling. I know what it's like to be insecure. I know what it's like to be so afraid to pace the floor back and forth, um, just because she went out and was going to the store or something, or going out with a couple friends, and you have this anxiety and this panic, like, you know, you're sure that she's going out to meet somebody else, or somebody else is going to sweep her off her feet because you're not good enough, and that's really what it comes down to, is you feel like you're not good enough, and until you heal that within yourself, you'll always never feel good enough. You'll always sabotage relationships. They will always become toxic. I almost assure you that. You have to heal what's broken. You have to find out what it is within yourself, that causes you not to feel good enough. And once you feel good enough and you accept who you are, you feel good about yourself, um, as a person, not only on the outside but on the inside. You start to gain a level of confidence. You start to find your own strength, and when you find your own strength and who you are, then you begin to understand that nobody can provide the happiness for you that you're looking for, if you aren't happy within yourself. You know, and you start finding that happiness within yourself, and it becomes evident to everybody around you because of the way you are, the smile on your face, the happiness, the confidence, the laughter, all of that. People see it in you, and then when you get into a relationship and you've healed those things, that relationship's going to become more healthy. It doesn't mean it's going to be the relationship for you. Um, you know that remains to be seen. Because people, you know, when you get into a relationship, kind of view it like a test drive. Like you're going to go get a vehicle and you're going to go buy a new vehicle and you're taking it for a test drive. You're learning about everything about it and about that person. You're learning everything about um, their strengths and their weaknesses. Now either you're going to complement their life or you're going to complicate it. And that's how people come into your life. It's a fact of life. People come into your life in one of two ways. They're either going to complement your life or they're going to complicate it. And when they come into your life and they complement it, there's that security, there's that healthiness, there's that, okay, you go do your thing, I'll go do my thing, and then we meet back at home at the end of the day, and you're completely happy. You know what you have at home, and you're happy about it. There's nothing that can distract you from that. There's nothing that can distract your partner from that. When you're completely confident in yourself, you know what you bring to the table. You know what you're bringing to that relationship. You know what you're bringing to her, and you're bringing her something healthier than she's probably ever had. And when you bring that healthiness, um, that can create fear too. If the person that you're with hasn't done the same kind of healing, and they have some insecurities, um, when when you represent everything that they've been looking for, it can almost be overwhelming too, because they don't know how to take that. They've never had it. It's not normal. Normal for them maybe. So they have this fear. They have this fear. They experience this fear, like, oh my God, this is everything I've ever wanted. and then they find themselves giving their whole heart and soul to it, and now they feel completely vulnerable. Like, oh my God, this person has the ability to literally destroy my life. And some people, it'll cause them to be comfortable to just be alone, because they'd rather be alone than tend to risk that devastation they feel that a broken heart would bring. But at some point, you have to risk. If you want to be happy in a relationship, you have to risk your heart. And to take a chance at love means that you have to be willing to be hurt. You have to be willing to be hurt. And, the most important thing, that I'd like to point out is that without trust, there is no relationship. Without communication, there is no relationship. You will grow apart. You will separate. You have to communicate. There's going to be differences. There's going to be fights. And the thing is, when you have these disagreements, these arguments are fights, And I don't mean physical fights because that's domestic. But what I mean is, you have these arguments, these big disagreements. And it's okay to be mad at each other, to walk away. But then when you come back in, after you both had time to think about things, you come back in and communicate and find out that you're able to work through it. Because you're in a position now where you're more willing to listen, to accept what the other person's telling you and how they feel. The other person becomes more willing to accept how you feel and what you're telling them. And you work together to compromise and find a happy medium. And when you find that happy medium, you also find that trust. It's like, oh my God, we just had this great big falling out, and here we are, It might have ended most relationships, but we're still here. That's where you start developing a strong trust in each other, to know that the other person is going to bail on you the first sign that things get hard, that things get tough. It's taking each other's feelings into consideration. Whether you're the male in a relationship, the female in a relationship, get out of ego, get out of pride. It does nobody any favors. I like to tell people, if you really, really love the person, does it really matter who's right or wrong? Does it really matter who's right or wrong? Is it that important to make the other person understand that you believe that you're right? If you loved them, does it really matter? It's really trivial, honestly. And what's the most important thing is, how does the other person feel? And how do you feel? And what can you do to find that happy medium where you're both satisfied, you're both happy? Because what you're doing is you're learning your boundaries. And a lot of people don't even understand what their boundaries are, that they even have boundaries, until they get stepped on, and then an argument happens. Well, you're discovering each other's boundaries, You're discovering each other, It's coming to the realization that you don't think and feel alike all the time, and that you have different ideas, and that's okay. You can agree to disagree. It don't have to be a fight. It don't have to be an argument every time. Sometimes that when you don't feel like you're, be fair to each other. Sometimes when you feel like you're not making leeway, somebody's getting offended or somebody's getting upset, take a time out. Hey, let's take a break, man. It's getting too personal. Like, starting to get upset. I'm starting to feel maybe a little bit angry. Let's take a break. Let me get out of my head. Let me think about things. Let me think things through. And then we'll come back and we'll talk. Both people should be doing that. Take a break. Both people should be looking at themselves, not pointing fingers at each other, because nothing gets accomplished. Absolutely nothing gets accomplished when you're sitting there pointing a finger at the other person saying, you did this, you're doing that, you're doing that. What's happening is that person's getting defensive, and they're feeling a need to defend themselves from being attacked. They're going to do the same thing back to you, and then what's happening is you're slinging mud at each other. Nothing gets accomplished. Stop pointing fingers at each other. Take a step back. Take responsibility for yourself and your own part in it, because we all have a part in it. Take a look at yourself. Take a look at your part in it, and find out what it is that you need to own up to, and get out of ego and pride. It's okay to come back into your partner and say, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong. You were right. You were right. And when I thought about it from your perspective, I realized just how right you were. And I apologize. Boom. You just developed a huge amount of trust in your partner because you just showed them that you don't always have to be right. You showed them that their feelings matter, and that you also were able to take a look at yourself and admit when you were wrong. You just developed a huge amount of trust in your partner that you're able to work through some of the most complicated situations, and that you're not going to bail. You're not going to get egotistical, bullheaded, prideful, and walk away and say screw you. You know, that's where a lot of relationships are ending nowadays. You know, that's where society has changed a lot, is because when the communication stops, it's just and things get tough. Rather than communicate, people will go put a band-aid on that. And what is that band-aid? It usually ends up being infidelity. You go out and you talk to somebody else. You distract yourself with somebody else. You think that finding somebody else is going to make that situation better. That, you know what, I don't want to deal with this, and this is really bringing me down, so I'll use this to bring me up. And all you're really doing is destroying the relationship that could be absolutely amazing if you just communicated. And as well as destroying your own self-worth, because you can't possibly feel good about yourself when you make choices and decisions that make you spiritually ill. And we all do it. I'm not exempt from it. I'm by far a saint. I struggle with myself daily, but I'm constantly looking at myself. I'm constantly working on myself, and I'm constantly trying to use my experiences to help other people get through their struggles. You know, I like to look at the healing process from relationships that ended in working with people and helping people, saying, you know, let's take an accelerated path to your healing. You know, because I've been through this, I've been down this, and I know what it's like to go through it alone, and I know what I've had to trip over to learn something. And I've tripped over myself a lot. So I know what it's like to scrape my knees. I know what it's like to get up and dust myself off. I know what it's like to criticize, blame, and judge. And then finally take ownership of myself and responsibility for myself and my direction and my choices and decisions. Okay, so can use that to help somebody so they're not going through it alone, and help them identify the things that it took you trial and error to identify. You know, it's like giving them a map, the easy way to the healing, easy way through this process, that emptiness and that loneliness. Okay, sometimes, you know, nobody's going to be able to fix that. You have to fix it yourself, but sometimes just having somebody there to inspire you and to motivate you to move in that direction is sometimes all it takes. It could be 5-10 minutes. You know, you could be fine 1 minute, and then 10 minutes later just completely all upside down again. Reach out and contact that person, contact somebody, say, I need to talk, I'm struggling with this. And what happens is you do that, it gives it's like a dehydrated person drinking Gatorade. You know, you get your energy right back up, and it starts charging your battery. You start getting a higher level of energy, and that higher level of energy is going to help you maintain high enough so that you can work through some of the things that you normally would just sit down here in anxiety, fear, and pity, and hurt, depression. You know, it doesn't have to get to that point. So, you know, one of the biggest things you don't want to do is you don't want to isolate. Do not isolate it. You're not doing yourself a favor. You're going to make the process a lot longer than it needs to be. And that's where you got to get out of your comfort zone. Do things out of the norm. Go out and do things that you normally wouldn't do. You know, go for a walk in the woods. Go for a walk along the river. Go contact a friend and go sit down and have coffee and just talk. Go sit in a park, write a poem, whatever it is. You know, get out of your norm. Do things differently. Do things with people that you normally wouldn't. Do things by yourself that you normally wouldn't. Experience life, because so far you've already come up to a point where you've only experienced it one way, and sometimes shifting things around and changing can make a world of difference, you know. But the biggest difference that you're going to find is from changing your perception. When you accept and understand that things end where they're supposed to end because there's new beginnings coming. When you realize that and you accept that, there's no such thing as an ending without a new beginning. There's always a new beginning. Nothing of the Creator's creation ever has an ending, just new beginnings. As in life and in death, just new beginnings. You know, so there's a lot more I can talk about on this topic, but you know, that'll probably be a discussion for another day. But these are just some things that I wanted to communicate and talk about for anybody who's struggling in a relationship right now. Stay in your own truth. You both have your own truth. Stay in yours. Get out of ego and pride. Be willing to look at yourself and accept your weaknesses and your strengths. When you're able to do that together, you're going to complement each other's weaknesses and strengthen them. You're going to complement each other because you didn't come into each other's life to complicate it. And that's all I got. So, you know, if you like my videos, if you're getting a lot out of them, then I ask that you subscribe to them, sharing with people that you know are struggling. And it's all about healing, you know. I'm not getting anything out of this other than trying to help people who are struggling to heal, to get, you know, hey, you don't have to sit down in the mud like I did, you know. Let me help you get up. Let me help dust you off, you know, and focus on something more inspiring and more motivational. And that's what you can do for each other too. Be that strength. So, you know, I thank you for your time and for listening to this. If you got I got a lot out of it, like I said, you know, please subscribe, and you'll be notified when new videos are posted and when I do new videos. And I'll be doing more in the future. There's a lot of healing that needs to go on all around us, and a lot of things that can be talked about. You know, I'm open to suggestions because I've experienced a lot in life, and I know what it's like to truly hurt and to come through that hurt and pain, and to take responsibility for myself. You know, to come out of the self-pity, to stop viewing myself as a victim and start taking responsibility for my own happiness. So I can sit and say, you know, life is good. Life is real good. You know, this is a beautiful life. And if you don't see your life that way, then something needs to change. And I'm here to help you if you need it. You know, I can't change the way you think or feel, but I care enough about you to give you options. Have a good evening. Love you all. Dokasho.